Hey everyone, welcome to Redefining Success, the Kingdom Builder Spotlight. This is Eric L. Dunavant. So excited to be with you. Joining me today is a treat. Nathaniel Clark, who is the managing partner and founder of Chasm Architecture, is with us. And I'm excited for him to tell his story, but I'm also excited for you to be able to just hear the things that he's doing, the things that he has overcome, but not only that, his vision. Nathaniel and I met on an airplane, I think about 3 years ago, sitting next to each other in what I like to call Southwest First Class, which is the exit row, and have kind of kindled a friendship since that time. And so, Nathaniel, getting you to come on here and talk to my listeners is exciting. Thank you for being here.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure. And it was funny that we were in that Southwest First Class seat together. And I kind of leaned over and asked you what book you're reading. And I don't remember what book you were reading, but it's been a great relationship and friendship ever since that encounter. So looking forward.
Can I just confess, I don't know if I remember what book I was reading either.
Hey, we read so many books, right? So it's important to just kind of reach out sometimes across the aisle. You never know who you're going to meet, who you're going to encounter. So,
well, all I remember, which is important to me, is your sock game was strong, which just tells me a lot about a man. A man who has a good sock game is
either I'm wearing socks or I'm not wearing socks. So it's going to be some really nice socks. I've actually transitioned since COVID. So I've been walking around the house in house shoes so much that I don't wear socks that much these days. So I get some really nice shoes that'll support my ankles, and we keep it moving.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. Nathaniel, we're gonna have to be careful because you and I can sit here and just talk back and forth like in friends, but my audience doesn't know you. Give them a 30,000 foot view, if you can, kind of your life, who you are, and kind of where you've come from.
Yeah, wow. So 30,000 foot view. I was born in Monroe, Louisiana. I grew up in a little suburb north of that, Sterlington, Louisiana, 7th Street community. Mom and dad in home. I actually knew my great grandparents, my great grandfathers on both sides. I knew a great grandmother as well on my mom's side. In this small little community, Sterlington, Louisiana. Where we kind of grew up, had a older sister who's a year older, a brother who's 4 years younger, and a baby sister who is 16 years younger. And I remember that day my parents told me that they were having a daughter or a kid, right? We didn't know exactly then. Yeah. And I just remember looking at my mom and saying, "Really, you guys are still doing that?" Right? But at 16 years younger, she's like my pride and joy before I had children myself, lovers of death. Her name's Angelica. She's actually a book writer, and she's doing a lot of things there as well. But my brother lives in Dallas. He remains and will always be my number one pick, even if Michael Jordan is sitting on the sidelines. That's the commitment. And then, my sister and I are really close. We were there kind of first and second, and have always been close, remain close, and grew up with a bunch of cousins in Louisiana, and then transitioned. Didn't really know what I wanted to do out of high school, so I have probably the most non-traditional path to becoming an architect. That's designed one of a globally recognized project. Coming from rural Louisiana, 7th Street town. Yeah. And, going to Kahoma Community College, HBCU that my father actually attended and played basketball at. And, I was one of those kids that didn't know what he wanted to do when he graduated high school. And I just knew, because my mother told us for 4 years, you got to get out of our house, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, when that day hit and we had to make the decision, or I had to make the decision to leave home, I didn't have a lot of options. Kind of played around. I didn't take it as seriously as I should have in high school. Graduated with a 2.9. I was actually disappointed. I thought I could skate by and get a B average. And that really taught me a lesson. I had an English teacher that didn't really give me the A that I wanted in English that could have gotten me a 3.3 to graduate high school. So I actually graduated high school at 2.9. And that taught me a good lesson that you got to go get it. Nobody's going to give you anything, right? A lot of lessons in life. And so with transition from Coahoma Community College, and then I was introduced to architecture there for the first time, really. And then transitioned to LSU, and I guess the rest is history. Go Tigers.
What was it about the Coahoma Community College that really kind of lit you up about architecture? What got you excited about the possibility inside of that?
Well, I think it was before that, right? In the 7th grade, I was in band, and I played trombone in band. And this was, so in the Sterlington High School, the school I went to, it was from 7th grade all the way through senior. So 7 to 12, and you take classes like band with the upperclassmen simultaneously. So I was in band 7th grade, and 4 students decided to have a conversation behind me about what Black men weren't. Like we couldn't lead a football team, we couldn't be the coach or the GM, right? We could never become the president of the United States. We are good athletes, but we could never be the lead person that's directing traffic, right? So I just started ghosting, on my trombone, not really playing notes, but listening. And honestly, that kind of hit me a little hard because I wanted to stand up and start naming all those folks that they may know in my neighborhood, but I didn't have the ammunition, right? So then I decided in that moment I would become, I would seek one of the whitest professions I could find and be very good at that profession, if not dominate that profession. And that's what led me to, that was in high school. So I didn't take sports I really loved basketball, but I didn't really take it as seriously as I could have or should have based upon the love that I had for the game, because I didn't have any examples that I could really, really tie to that were professional basketball athletes, successful and doing those things. So like, all right, so why am I putting all this effort in? What's the point, right? So then I transitioned I go through high school, right? Graduate, I got to find something to do, right? Looked at all kinds of options. And then I transitioned at the last minute, right? My dad made a phone call to the coach at Coahoma Community College, James Washington, who recently retired. They were the captain and co-captain of the basketball team when my dad was there. And now he's coaching. He made a phone call and said, I got to get my son out of the house. Will you take him? And he did. And, when I got there, I had to choose a major. And Freddie Caswell, who's one of my great mentors, recently passed away, architect. He was over the engineering department. And behind his head, I saw civil engineering and other engineering, right? And he was also nodding at the table. So I'm like, man, do I really want to do that? That's not really the right image that I want to pursue with someone nodding at the table when they're recruiting students. And then I looked over and I saw drafting and design, and Jacqueline Maxwell, the professor of that program, and she was doing this because she saw me looking around. I was trying to make a decision on the fly for a major. Oh, wow. Think about this. I didn't leave high school with a major. I didn't have an idea of what I wanted to do. And I go to Coahoma Community College on a phone call, right? And then I get in the room and I'm trying to make a decision, and I see drafting and design, and above her shoulder, I see the word architecture, and I say, that's it.
Really?
Really?
Wow. Wow.
I've never really told that story, to that whole story. So this is an exclusive. This is a Nate Clark.
There we go. There we go.
But yeah, I mean, and then, I kind of got into architecture. Freddie Caswell, who's an architect, became one of my biggest mentors. I mean, he's the guy that told me when I graduated Coahoma after 2 years, that, why go, so it's an HBCU. So that, I just left a HBCYOU podcast broadcast with D Brown, my great friend. Yeah. And on that broadcast, we were talking about, the transition and what it means to be an HBCU and attend an HBCU and, how they nourish you. And, I was wanting to go and continue my path as a student in the HBCU program at Tuskegee or FAMU or Howard or some of those other institutions. And what he actually told me was that, listen, the profession is 99.9% white male. If you can compete, we've put you in a position to compete. So go to an institution where you can compete and show that you're on the similar level or same level or beyond the level as the folks that you're going to be competing with in the industry. And it was that level of confidence that you get from an HBCU and you get from, you can get it from a majority college, but, in the English class at some of these smaller institutions at a community college, right? And that was a community college.
Right.
That was a 4-year institution. At a 2-year institution, the classes are maybe 15 to 20 students. You go to English at LSU, it's 300 students and 150 of them are tape recorders, right? In the classroom. So, that path to architecture was really non-traditional path. But I fell in love with it at Kahoma, then transitioned. Actually, before I attended LSU, we grew up across the street from a chemical plant in rural Louisiana all my life, right? And that plant exploded. The summer I graduated from Kahoma, I think it was in May, and I graduated early May or late April, it exploded, and I graduated in May. So I went home because my mother was at home with my youngest sister, and that plant exploded. They had to get out of town, grab my grandparents, and they fled because they didn't know where the next explosion was going to happen. But anyway, I worked, before I transitioned to LSU, I was working at Brown and Root, Braun, as a carpenter and electrician helper and a surveyor. And during that duration, I worked 7 days a week, 12 hours a day for 6 months straight.
Did you really?
Yeah. Yeah, that was, and so I was 18, 19 at the time. Yep. So I was making a lot of money.
Yep.
Working those hours. And, I was on my superintendent, right? The guy that I was working closely with, he said, listen, I used to beat him at checkers every day. My great grandfather taught me how to play checkers, and he just thought he was checkers king, right? So on the first morning break at 10:15, we would sit in and I would beat him. I would beat the brakes off this guy every day.
Every day.
And he told me that, he said his name was Porter Crew. He said, listen, you're too smart to sit in a trailer with me on a job site working 7 days a week, 12 hours a day. You're too intelligent for this. So I'm going to bust your hump. And on this job, you're going to beat me at checkers, but I'm going to bust your hump out here until you tell me you're going back to school.
Wow.
And it was that voice that really said, you know what, let me get back to the path that I'm supposed to be on. I enrolled in LSU and finished a 5-year program in 4.5 years, graduated with the College of Design Dean's Medal. So Freddie Caswell was right. You put in the time. You compete, and the professors at LSU are the guys that award the students with that award, that very important critical role.
Yeah.
And I was actually the first African American to receive that award at LSU, and then transition out of that and became a partner in a firm, went from intern to VP of a company in Baton Rouge. Wow. In about 8 years, and became actually the first African American to become a partner in a majority firm in the history of Louisiana.
Is that right? Wow.
a lot of barriers broken, but
Yeah.
really none of that would have happened without voices, other people's voices, a lot of people praying,
Yeah.
a lot of faith, because it's so easy to get off the path. And
Mm.
everybody thinks that, oh yeah, I grew up and when I was 4 years old, I wanted to be an architect because I saw an architect building my house. No, I walked into a room and saw the word architecture and I said, hey, I don't know any African Americans in architecture.
Mm.
None. I know I
Yeah.
have no examples. So that is me. I'm going to be the example that, because I don't know anyone. So that sounds like a really good gap to fill uh, for myself. It sounds like an odd way to make a decision about your life path. That's what
Yeah.
happened.
What has been maybe, I mean, so you've been on this journey. The thing that I hear you say over and over, you've said this a couple of times, but it's the voices we listen, the voices that speak into us.
Yes.
But Nate, I think the other thing that gets to be important, it's not just the voices that speak into us, because there were negative voices along the way too, right? You talked about playing the trombone and there are voices behind you. So sometimes it's the voices we choose to listen to.
Yes.
So what do you feel like was really kind of the defining piece of your life that helped you discern what are the right voices to listen to versus the wrong voices to listen to?
I think discernment, you hit the point. Like we hadn't rehearsed this discussion, right? I mean, first time I saw you this morning, but discernment, right? I think you pray for discernment, right? Having old heads in my life, like great grandfathers, right? And grandfathers and my father and my mother, right? All those folks that didn't have money to put me through school, all they said to me is, hey, baby, I'll pray for you, right? And so discernment comes with wisdom. And, wisdom with wisdom, the biggest thing tethered to wisdom is discernment, right? You have to have the ability to look at a situation and understand if the decisions that you're making are good decisions. I haven't always made good decisions. I'm sure I made some bad decisions already this morning, right? But I think, if you look at life and you're willing to say, okay, I forgive myself and others for the things that have transpired, that's the only way that you can really, really kind of move on and understand the essence of life. But I would say discernment is critical. And, my family, like instilled in us, confidence, like, you don't have to hear I love you from someone else when you hear it every day. So I don't need you to really tell me you love me or that I'm precious or that I'm good or that I'm brilliant or that I'm kind. Those are the things you hear at home from your family, so that when someone says it to you and they are doing it to manipulate you, you don't fall into that crack, right? And I've got daughters, so I tell my daughters, that all the time. I tell them why I tell them that I love them. They're 10 and 11, right? Man, after Christmas, it's birthday season in my
right.
It's just a continuous run till June. And then I'm in October and everybody forgets October because Halloween is right around the corner. But anyway, those are critical things that confidence and the willingness to be great, like that's part of it also. Like my mother used to show us, she couldn't fly us to New York, right? But she would show us images of New York. We would sit down and we would watch the lifestyles of the rich and famous, right? We would watch all of these shows. She had Architectural Digest on the table, right? And I just remember, I didn't want to be an architect, but as I start to have more of these discussions out loud about, the things that were attractive to me in history, through my history, I see these little pointers that kind of lead me to this decision that I feel that I made through, happenstance. But I think a lot of things were kind of on the path when you look back that were nudging you to the direction that you really needed to go. So it's kind of weird, really a great way to kind of piece all that back together by talking about it out loud, unrehearsed, because
Right.
then you start to remember, things that were on the path.
Well, so the name of the podcast is Redefining Success. And one of the things that I don't think any of my other guests have really grabbed onto the way that you have this morning is this idea. One of my key beliefs and philosophies is that we spend so much time focused on financial accumulation, and what we miss is the family. It's the relational side. It's the family impact that comes in. And that's what I'm hearing just echoed all throughout your story. It was about the family. It was about the love. It was about people believing in you and
Right.
giving you those voices to hear. And so as we look at where we are today, that then becomes the most important thing we can pass on. So maybe we can't affect our past. Maybe someone's listening who's like, well, I didn't have that growing up, but you can choose what voices you listen to. And you can also choose how you're going to speak to your own family and speak over your own children and speak vision into them as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my family. So my wife Shauna and I, we had a vision session with the kids, and we had just a family meeting, and that family meeting was a vision session. And I went first, just to kind of help them visualize how big you can dream. And we were just sitting around the table. Even, this was last year. My son is 4, and even the girls were all there. We were just sitting around the table talking. And I said, listen, I want to have my own private island, and I want to be on our beach. Like, we own the beach. And I want to sit here, and your mom has her little beverage, right? I have my beverage. The dog is running around on our beach. Our yacht is out in the sea. Man, we have a really nice house that's back up on the hill, and you guys are out here with your friends. And it's ours, right? We've earned it. We've worked for it. Nobody can take it. And the first thing that they both looked at each other, all of them looked at each other and said, is that we can have that. And I said, you can have anything you want.
Yeah.
All you have to do is positively put that out in the universe, and the universe will bring that to you. But you have to put in the work also. You can't just sit back and say, hey, I want $1 billion, and then go and sit on the couch and, watch Housewives all day, right? It doesn't work. That doesn't work, right? You have to put in the work. And, I'm a big fan of Kobe Bryant, and the late, great. And, you got to put in the work, put up 400 shots after the game, win or lose.
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing? Win or lose, put up the shots, because that's the only way you can be great, is to put in the work.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So you finish LSU, because we didn't get a little bit of this transition, and you can go a little bit faster or whatever you kind of feel called to do. But I would love to kind of understand how you end up in Atlanta, how you end up kind of founding Chasm, and what the journey is to doing that, maybe meeting Shauna along the way. What does that journey look like? Because you've broken a lot of barriers getting out of LSU and getting on with a partner inside of this other firm. But how does Chasm come into the picture?
So in 2003, I think there was a tough market hit in Baton Rouge. And I was recruited by two gentlemen, Fred Grace and Jerry Hebert, in Baton Rouge. And that's the company I became partner with. And, after I made partner, actually the managing partner at the time came to me and said, we just lost 4 or 5 projects. We're going to have to lay some people off. I really need someone to help me. I need you, he said, to help me win some work. So I said, all right, give me a year. and a year, we had landed a project at Southern University as a $32 million project, student housing project. I think it was the largest non-joint venture project in the history of the firm at the time, because back then a $32 million project was a huge project in that market. Right? I mean, it's still a nice project. So that project is what transitioned me to partner. I had really good friends at Southern University. They were also assisting me in transitioning to become a leader, not just in that firm, but just in the market. So That was a nod to that university, HBCU, by the way.
Yeah,
It helped me to transition and become partner in that firm. And then, with that kind of energy, right, and momentum, I just didn't feel that Baton Rouge couldn't manage. Baton Rouge is not New Orleans, right? It's not Dallas. It's certainly not Atlanta. So I didn't feel at the time that a firm of, say, 40, 30 with the prospects of growing to 40 could financially sustain itself long term in Baton Rouge. It's just not enough people flowing through it. So I approached my partners about creating another company. I would need to own the majority of it if I were to move out to that market or whatever that market was. So in its infancy, Chasm was owned 60% by me and 40% by the other firm that I worked with. And I was still the second largest stockholder of the other firm.
Okay.
And Katrina happened, right? And when Katrina happened, there was the prospect, and this was real, right? This was real money.
Yeah.
The prospect of a lot of work pouring into South Louisiana. But and they wanted me to open an office, shut down Chasm, and then open an office in New Orleans. And I just felt that that was short-sighted. I didn't feel that, that was the right move, because if there's a lot of money to be had in South Louisiana, then it's the smartest time to expand to another market and then share the work in that market that's booming to build the market that you want to transition to, so that you can be in two markets simultaneously, because at some point the money's going to run out in New Orleans.
Yep.
Right. The FEMA funds are going to leave in about 10 years, but if you're only looking at the first 5, then you're going to find yourself in a bad situation when those projects are built out and they have a 25 to 30 year shelf life where they know that client won't need a building, right? You won't need a hospital, won't need a fire station. And so I decided I was going to buy them out. So I bought them out of Chasm. I sold all my stock in their company, and then I opened an office immediately right back in Louisiana because that's where the work was, and nobody really knew that I had left. And I was flying back and forth to Louisiana probably every 2 weeks in Atlanta, just so in most cases people don't see you but once a month, right? That's clients. Yep. So if they see me, then they think I'm still there.
Yeah.
And if they see me in Atlanta, they think I live here. So I played that charade for about 2 years. And honestly, that's what transitioned us through Chasm, through the recession, was just maintaining my relationships in New Orleans and working on FEMA projects and working on master plans and all those projects that were coming, but also building, my brand here in Atlanta, having moved to Atlanta without a single contract.
Wow.
Right? But just the belief that with the busiest airport in the world, right?
Yep.
That there's more people transitioning through Atlanta than anywhere else in the world, which means that there's more opportunity to meet people, which means there's more opportunity to grow a company. So I thought these are just natural things that you think about if you're responsible for taking care of folks.
Well, I mean, it's natural things you think about it when God gifts you with vision, which is what you keep telling this over and over in your story. It's one of the reasons you and I have really connected. You are a natural visionary and you listen to what God says to you and you see really, really well. I don't know anyone else that would have thought of not chasing the dollars 100% in New Orleans with an idea of how do I think 10, 15, 20 years out. That took some courage.
Yeah, that took courage. It took a lot of guts also to just say, sometimes though, people know your value more than you, and they see value you more than you see it in yourself. And then sometimes, this is what I tell my children, like, my mentors currently are trial and error, right? Because if I can go through that trial, then I can show you how to navigate that minefield.
Yeah.
But if, a lot of it has to do with confidence and faith. And listen, confidence is one thing. That's just me. Like, I'm a confident guy. I believe I can get it done. But if you don't have faith and then you don't put that into action and you're just complaining, then you're not operating and you're not doing what you're supposed to do. You can't complain and have faith simultaneously. Yeah. It's impossible.
Did anyone tell you were crazy for doing it the way that you did?
Crazy. Everybody told me I was crazy.
I love it.
But I think, it was crazy. You take a sure thing, right?
Yeah.
This was and they still are. Listen, man, I only work for two companies. I work for Jerry Abair and Fred Grace, and I work for myself, right? Yeah. So the success every success that they have, I feel that I'm a part of that success because I was there when they were building the success. And by the way, they now have, they're not just in that market. So it happened anyway, right? Yeah. Yeah. So they just, there are certain things that certain folks are blessed with. I don't have an MBA, right? I don't have a business, degree, right? My parents don't. My parents graduated high school and my dad went and played ball in a couple places for college. And he was a sports salesman, right? And my mother's a pianist, and he's actually a Methodist minister getting ready to retire now. Is he really? But yeah, they just regular people with an understanding of, you got to put in the work. I think the work ethic is worth that. And I heard even Will Smith say this: I'm not the most talented, I'm not the brightest, but I have one of the craziest work ethics. No one is going to outwork me. Yeah. And I think, there's a lot of folks that are very similar in that, they don't have necessarily the talent, right? But if you put in the work and you have some raw skill set, you can go a lot of places.
Yeah, I think what we find, it's a blessing in one sense because so many people give up way too early. And when you've got that work ethic and that DNA in you, and you can see a vision that no one else can see, even when they're like, you're crazy, quit, stop, that's right. Where you get the breakthrough.
Absolutely. Yes. A lot of people quit too early. A lot of people complain too much. And part of that complaint is they are uncomfortable. And that's kind of the definition of really chasm. Is, I don't know if I ever told you this, that so I'm in third year architecture school at LSU. Julian White, who was the first African-American professor at LSU, was my architectural professor. Really? Imagine that. Yeah. He became the first professor at LSU, African-American, the same year I was born, 1971, wow. Right? He then became my mentor at LSU. So I'm in his class and we're going over shade tree mechanics, right? I'm doing this project that's called shade tree mechanics. And I'm talking about tectonic plates and, how the thing shifts and all this. And he looks at me over his glasses and says, you have no idea what you're talking about. Go to the design library and, figure out what you want to design because this is not it. So I go there and I'm looking up tectonic plates and, earthquakes and how things shift. And I run across the word chasm. I said, that's a cool word. So I started reading chasm, crevice, calls, deep fissure, right? Whatever. And then the second definition is a sudden interruption in continuity. I'm like, sudden interruption in continuity. So I locked that word away. I changed my concept, by the way, because I didn't know what I was talking about, right? I locked that word away and I didn't say that word again. I didn't write it down again until I created Chasm in 2005. when I was transitioning out of the partnership with the other company. So I always knew I was going to name my company Chasm. And, we talk about the sudden interruption of evolution, sudden interruption of continuity symbolizing the evolution of new ideas. That means that in order for you to really be great, you have to operate uncomfortably. You have to operate. If you are comfortable, then you're going to miss 10 years of life.
Oh, that's good.
You have to operate outside of your comfort zone in order to really see an exponential change in your life. And if you're not willing to do that, you're going to miss. I believe you're going to miss something phenomenal that could happen in your life that you could not even imagine.
God, that's so good. That's so good. Nathaniel, we've got about 10 minutes left, and I could keep you on here for probably an hour, and we could keep telling stories, but I got two things I want to make sure we don't miss before we finish. One, I want you to talk a little bit about kind of what you've got going on with P3. If you want to go back and sitting over your shoulder, for those of you who can't see, the canopies at the Atlanta airport were designed by Chasm and by Nathaniel and his group. I mean, they're just beautiful, especially when they're lit up. You may want to talk about that a little bit, P3, but we're not going to get out of here without you talking about your dreams and vision for Chasm Academy.
Great. So let's talk a little bit about P3 first. So D Brown and I are friends, met and started P3 Group, the nation's largest public-private partnership company in the U.S. And he came to call me on a Saturday and said, Nate, if I bring the legal and if I bring in, all of the potentially not the construction, but the development side of things, the finance, I think we can go into some of these small municipalities who don't know how to put transactions together and build fire stations for these communities and, municipal courthouses. And we've done that, right? I brought in the architectural and introduced the construction, brought in all the engineering, and we've successfully grown a brand for P3 and Chasm that is nationwide. And we really are community-based. We really want to work within the communities that look like us, in the communities that mean they look like us, meaning they don't have the financial means to execute a project. So you don't have to be African-American to look like us. I think the biggest thing is folks don't have the money to do what they dream that they want to do. And we bring that level of vision to these communities. And we've done that successfully over the past, 5 years now, 6 years now.
But the beautiful part of that is you talked about, it was the voices and the vision that's inside of you. When you guys go in and do this, you're bringing voices and vision into a community that doesn't have it. I mean, that's what I want my listeners to understand, that you're not saying out loud, right? I mean, that is the beautiful part of what you're bringing to these communities.
Absolutely. We're bringing, so we designed a Veterans Memorial facility in Jefferson County. Jefferson County was hit bad by the AIDS. I want to say pandemic, but that's the only word that I can think of, but epidemic, right? Epidemic, and then once again by COVID, right? So you go into these communities that really need something to uplift them. And we designed a coroner's office, a health unit, and a veterans building that also had a memorial tethered to it. And I tell you, when we dedicated the Veterans Memorial, you had folks in the community crying, because they haven't seen a new building of this magnitude for them, right? These buildings are for the people in the community. It's a testament to, what the DNA of the companies are about, and also what, the vision that we put into these things is really about. Like, we really want to be in a position to help folks and just kind of uplift a community through design and construction and finance.
Absolutely. The most important thing I think that people need is hope, is a belief that something greater is possible.
Yes, absolutely. So this thing behind me, I'll tell you how that story went down. So Atlanta Airport was the primary reason I came here. I hadn't pursued any work with the city really. And I heard about this 5-year modernization on call of the Atlanta airport. And I said to myself, wow, do I really want to get tied down for 5 years with a client? Because once you're in there, it kind of changes the DNA of your firm. And I wasn't sure I was ready for that yet. And I also had heard some great stories, but I also heard some bad stories about working with large municipalities. So I decided to go anyway. And I met at the airport with a couple of guys who were pursuing it. And one firm said, well, we already have our team together. Would you mind being a consultant? And one team said, well, you could be a joint venture partner on the team. And I said, well, I live in Atlanta. I really don't want to be a consultant. I'm really trying to change the way firms like mine are viewed and not just be a consultant on a team. So I told the first team no. And listen, the city of Atlanta, not chasing the money again, right? Yeah. The city of Atlanta allows me to be a prime and a consultant on another team at the same time. But I chose just to be a prime because I didn't want to label my firm as a firm that chases money.
Yep.
Right. So we went out, we teamed with HOK and Stanley Love Stanley, and the airport canopies were on the landside modernization ticket, and 864-foot long ETFE diagrid canopies that light up to any holiday that you can think of. The facades were also part of that program, some of the interiors as well. We did the first F380 gate, Airbus gate at the city of Atlanta. Just imagine all of this from a guy that walked into a room and saw the word architecture.
As I said, a guy with vision. I'm going to keep telling you that. You're just a man with vision. Which, before we finish up, tell them about your vision for Chasm Academy.
So Chasm Academy, and my vision of it really is, just thinking about my daughters and my son, right? So I didn't grow up with access to architecture, but my daughter, since the age of 7, has said she wants to be an architect. Right. And that's because she has access to an architect, right? And if we can provide access to, these other professions to students, it doesn't have to be architecture. It could be anything, right? Sure. It could be finance. It could be development. It could be whatever. It could be astrology. I don't care, right? But we have to provide access to young minds so that they can see beyond where they're living and beyond where their parents are and dream much bigger than being what they see on television, right? Everybody wants to be a professional football player or a professional basketball player or whatever they see on television. But then you've got these invisible billionaires walking around and nobody is sharing how you can do that, how you can achieve that. And I think we got to get off of our, our egos and reach back and help folks that really they just need someone that can help them with their vision, help them visualize themselves, flying first class, right? Taking vacations in places where they never thought, and then, not worrying about how the next check is going to come in, right? And honestly, that can happen to all of us. I mean, when you're operating a company, it gets lean.
It does. Yeah.
Right. I'm not here saying that we're in the best financial shape as a company. Listen, it gets lean when we are out here trying to create vision and create legacy. And a lot of that is paying it forward and making sure that you're not thinking about, now or yesterday, right? Some of this is investing in where the company is headed and where you're going to be, 5 years from now, not thinking about what you're currently working on.
Yeah. It comes back to vision and hope. I mean, that's what I've kind of taken from you today. You've got to have vision. You got to have hope.
Yes.
And the third thing I'd add is you got to have work ethic, because you got to be able to put your shoulder into it and do it.
You gotta have work ethic. You gotta have it. I mean, hey, I remember coming up as a kid, we had a 200-foot garden next door, and we would have to get up in the morning on Saturday and go out to that garden while my friends were playing in the street.
Yep. Not
gotta
fun.
put in work, man. 400 shots before the game, after the game, win or lose.
Nathaniel, before we kind of wrap up here, one question. Favorite book or book you and I met in one sense over a book. What's your favorite book other than the Bible that you love to share with people?
Wow. My favorite book. So I got this book before I was born. It was my first book. It was As a Man Thinketh, right? And it's from a proverb. I can't think. If you ask me who the author is right now, I'm so sorry.
Isn't it Og Mandino?
No.
Okay.
Yeah. As a Man Thinketh is the book. It's a small read, right? But it really talks about your thought process and where your thoughts take you. And I used to coach AAU basketball. I used to tell kids all the time, listen, if you want to be a gangster, you're going to find yourself in a gangster situation, right? If you want to be great, right, you're going to find yourself in a great situation. So it's all about how you project the things, your thoughts. But no one controls your thoughts. Only you control your thoughts, right?
That's true.
So your thought process has to modify if you want to modify your outcomes in life. And if you can't do that,
Allen is the author of
James Allen. Thank you so much. James Allen. I knew it was two first names, right? But yeah, thank you so much. James Allen, As a Man Thinketh, great book. I still have that book. That book is 50 years old, right? Going on 51. I read it every year, right? I go back to it every year. And at some point I'll pass it along to either, I don't know who I'm going to pass it along to. If it's going to be my knucklehead son, or I give all of them.
You may have to get them all their own copy. If it's like my house, as my kids get older, they fight over stuff. So
yeah, that's why I paused. I was about to name a name and I forgot we weren't talking on an airplane. We're talking on a podcast.
We are. Nathaniel, if anybody's listening and they're like, I just love this story, and they want to get in touch with you, or they want to just know more about what you're doing and just kind of follow you, what's the best way to stay on top of what you're doing and things you're involved in?
I say jump on LinkedIn and find me, Nathaniel O. Clark. You can go to our website, chasmarchitecture.com, and just kind of check us out, see what we're doing. And I'm also going to be starting to release some podcasts. I'm on the Self-Made broadcast with D Brown as well. Got a lot of media things that are happening right now. We just filmed 3 shows in Peoria, Illinois, with Self-Made and HBCYOU, right? I think it's going to be a lot of fun to watch those. And, I'll be one of the regulars on those shows that comes up. So, want to just promote those things, man. It's been a good ride, and it's all about looking down the line, right? How do you create legacy? Thank you so much, Eric. This has been great.
We're going to have to probably do this again. I love your stories, and we barely scratched the surface, but all the information you shared today was so rich. So thank you, Nathaniel, for being with us. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today and investing this time. And we will see you again next week. God bless you.